Today we have an award-winning graphic novelist, educator, and computer scientist, Luen Yang. Welcome to being here, or welcome here.
Well, thank you for having me,
yeah.
Regina.
Well, thank you for coming. This is our first ever video recorded show, so this is going to be great, and it's going to be perfect.
It's going to be amazing.
Right, it's going to be perfect because every time you do something to start, it should be perfect, or
absolutely. Otherwise, or you don't do it again.
Never again.
That's
We're never going to do it again. Yes, that's exactly how science and education works.
Yes.
This is all sarcasm, please, for our watchers and listeners. This past January, the Library of Congress nominated you for the 5th, I'm going to get this right, the 5th National Ambassador for Young People's Literature. And it's a 2-year appointment, right?
Yes.
And we're going to come back to what that means.
Okay.
But it's a big deal, though.
It was a crazy thing.
Yeah.
I got to fly out to Washington, D.C. with my wife.
Yeah.
Super fancy, all these fancy people in a room. They gave me a fancy medal. It was amazing.
And did Obama pick you, President
no,
Obama, or was it?
I was disappointed.
Right.
I was disappointed
You're like,
when
where
I found
is
that
he?
out. But it was almost as good. It was
right.
the Librarian of Congress.
Right.
So at the time it was a guy named David Mao, and then there was a crew of folks from the Children's Book Council. The previous National Ambassador was also on that.
Okay. So
awesome.
They know President Obama. So by
yeah,
one degree.
Somebody there has had a meal with President Obama.
Right, right. So you're also the current writer for Superman on DC Comics,
yes.
which is amazing. And I'm geeking out right now. And your first ever, where you were the writer on issue 41, which I have here.
Wow. Well, thank you for having it.
No, well, Comics Place here in Bellingham, they just gave it to me because they're super nice. Because they didn't have any of your other books, and I was kind of sad. So they gave me this. So we're going to come back to being a writer for Superman. So again, welcome to being here.
Thank you.
First ever video. It's going to be great. But like I said before, you kind of know a lot of, well, I shouldn't say a lot about science. Maybe that's insulting.
I don't know that much about science.
But
I was like a B minus student when I was going through college.
So was I. Now PhD. That's what happens.
That's awesome.
But you know something about STEM, and you want to promote STEM in your new position,
yes.
right? Okay.
Yes, that's part of the platform.
Right. And we're going to come back.
Sure.
I really like you're saying that every ambassador has had this platform, and that's part of yours yes. for this next 2 years. So we're going to come back to that. But before we do that, we always talk about on our podcast and now on our show here, we talk about background. And we talk about the first thing we want to talk about is how did you get into STEM? Because I know that you did major in computer science, right? Or was it computer engineering?
It was computer. I think it was. I don't remember the exact title.
It's all right.
I think it was computer engineering.
It changes up. I mean.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So you did major in some sort of STEM, and I keep on saying STEM. So for our listeners and for our watchers, STEM is science, technology, engineering, and math.
That's right.
Right. So it's words, us in the business use. But I do also want to talk about your first two, let's talk about your first one, your first graphic novel. And it really does talk about the Asian American experience. So I want to talk about these two things. So,
sure.
So whatever you'd like to start with. Want to talk about computer science and your spark, how you got into that, or maybe talk about this?
Well, I actually got into computer science and comics when I was in 5th grade.
Oh,
5th grade was a big year for me, looking back.
It was an eventful year.
It absolutely was. It absolutely was. So in 5th grade, my mom bought me my first comic book. Oh, okay. When I was a kid at local bookstores, they had these things called spinner racks. Do you remember that?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So I don't think anyone under the age of 30 remembers that.
Right.
But
I am over 30. You got me.
There were these wireframe racks that would carry a month's worth of comics.
Right.
And then you could spin them so that you could see them all.
Yeah.
And one night, my mom took me to our local bookstore. I saw this issue of Marvel 2-in-1.
Okay.
It was starring The Thing and Rom the Space Knight. So as soon as I saw it, I just knew I needed to own it.
Right.
And I brought it up to Mom. I said, Mom, will you please buy this for me? She refused to buy it for me because she thought The Thing looked way too scary.
Yeah.
Instead, she bought me the latest.
You're in 5th grade, though.
I know. I have to be honest, though. If I look back, I was kind of a wimp. Especially when it came to monsters. So she had a point.
Right.
She definitely had a point. She made me.
She knew you.
She made me put that back, and she bought me the latest Superman comic.
Okay.
Which was it was like a DC Comics Presents. I don't know. I think it was in the 50s.
Okay.
It had Superman and the Atomic Knights in it. So that was
Okay.
the very first comic I bought.
I like how she's like, Marvel, no, here's DC.
Yeah, it's because of Superman, right? Like
right.
she wouldn't have bought me Batman either. It's just because Superman is such a Boy Scout.
He is.
Yeah.
He is. But he does have depth, and we're going to get back
He
to that
does.
when because you're the writer now.
I
so
agree.
You know.
I agree. I agree.
Yeah.
Actually, when I was in 5th grade, I was not a big Superman fan.
So
So 5th grade.
5th grade.
Started buying comics.
Yeah.
I also started making comics. I had this friend named Jeremy Kanyoshi when I was in 5th grade,
Okay.
and we started making comics together. So we
you still know him?
brainstormed stories. I do. We lost touch, and then we reconnected through the magic of Facebook.
Okay.
So we just hung out. He lives in Hawaii.
Okay.
A couple years ago, we went out and hung out with him. It was fun.
Oh no, you have to go to Hawaii. Super sad.
Yeah. So sad to go to Hawaii.
Right. So you're friends with his name one more time?
Jeremy.
Okay, Jeremy, and you both like love comics.
We both loved comics.
Yeah.
I was a new comic book reader. He'd been reading for a really long time.
In 5th grade?
In 5th grade.
He was like, when I was 2.
Exactly. Like when he learned how to read, that was the first thing he did, was he started buying comics. His mom was
cool.
super, yeah. Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, my parents were not so cool with me
Right,
reading
me
comics.
neither.
It took me a long time to get them to turn around.
Right.
So that's how I got into comics, 5th
Right.
grade. That same year, during the summer, between 5th and 6th grade, I took my first coding class. I took it as a summer enrichment class.
Cool.
It was.
Was it at a university or something?
No. It was. Well, this was in Silicon Valley, right?
Okay.
So I think it was like somebody's mom was a programmer, and she wanted to teach her
cool.
kid and all of his friends.
You can't walk us down the street without falling into somebody who's like a
Yeah.
computer programmer. Okay.
Yeah. It's just the computer town.
Right.
So I learned Logo. Do you know what that is?
It sounds super familiar, but tell me what logo
it's
is.
It's a language that was created specifically for education. It was created by this guy named Seymour Papert.
That sounds awesome.
And do you know Seymour Papert?
No,
there's
it's
like a
an
little
awesome
cult.
name.
There's a little cult around Seymour Papert because he's
Is
such a
it
big
like
deal.
the Tesla cult, like the Nikola Tesla?
A little bit
Really?
like that.
Wow.
I don't think it's as big, but
Okay.
I'm trying to grow it.
Right.
He's amazing. This dude is amazing. He
Okay.
was really into computers. He was also really into education. So he created this theory called constructionism about how you should teach kids.
Okay.
And then he created this language. He created it with a team. There's this other guy named Wally Ferzig, I think you pronounce his last name.
And what year was
Cynthia
this about?
Solomon. This was like 60s, I think.
Okay.
So the whole point of the reason why Logo was awesome is that there's this little turtle.
Okay.
Right, and it looks like a triangle because it was the 80s, and you just couldn't draw a turtle with the graphics that
Right.
they had back then. But what you would do with logos, you would give this turtle commands, and it would just go around the screen and draw stuff.
That is the coolest thing ever.
It was amazing because I was always into art, right? So,
Right.
So what that computer programming class was all about was making art. It was about making art by coding.
I do like your thing about logo. This idea of this little thing that was like a turtle. Was that the origin of your love for turtles?
No, turtles just keep showing up, but they're totally unrelated.
That's weird though.
Yeah, it's a little weird. It's a little weird that it keeps coming back. The whole turtle thing actually.
So just to reference for our viewers and our listeners, what I'm referencing is The Shadow Hero, which is this wonderful book. This is the first thing I read a couple days
cool.
ago,
Thank
and I was
you.
just like, this is amazing. And it's the first Asian American superhero called the Green Turtle, and it was just a great story.
Thank you.
Yeah,
thank you.
no.
Well,
I
the
loved
Green
it.
Turtle's not my invention, right?
Right.
So he's this
but this is your
old character.
reinterpretation.
Yeah. It's Sunny and I bringing back this old character that nobody remembers.
Yeah,
For
yeah.
sure.
Well,
Yeah.
so do you want to tell us? Maybe we can go back to this idea of how you kind of maybe growing up, and we can come back to the Green Turtle and this book, because I really like this story, and I could identify with definitely both of these stories.
Well,
So maybe let's just start with the Green Turtle. So you said that this is a comic, or derived from a comic from the 1940s, right? You can tell us a little bit about that.
Sure. In the 1940s, there was this cartoonist. His name was Chu Hing, one of the first Asian Americans to work in the American comic book industry.
Right.
And the 1940s, like we call that the golden age of comics,
Right.
because that was when comic books, especially superhero comics,
Right.
first became like this mass medium, right?
Right.
And people were getting crazy rich off of it. Like
Right.
there was Superman debuted around that time, Batman debuted around that time. There were these international sensations. There's also like Captain Marvel, Shazam was also
Right.
around that time.
Yeah.
And it's hard to believe now, but back then he was actually on the same level as Superman. You know,
Right.
he was
Well,
just as popular.
if you watch Batman Brave and the Bold now, which is a new animated series, he's in that.
Yeah,
And he's
he's
also in
amazing
Young
in that.
Justice, is he? I don't remember, but
Yeah.
yeah. I think he's cool.
I love him. I think he's like a total fantasy character. In any case, golden age of American superhero comics, and all these publishers were just popping up and throwing characters out at the public.
Yeah.
Because people wanted to find the next Batman or Superman. So this was the environment that it was in, right? And Chu Hing, this Chinese American cartoonist, was working for this really small company called Rural Home that only lasted a couple of years. Rural Home asked him to create a character, like a superhero character. So he does. He creates the Green Turtle. The rumor about the Green Turtle is that Chu wanted him to be a Chinese American, like he himself was.
I love that story in the back.
But his publishers wouldn't let him do it.
Right.
Because,
it's 1944.
Yeah. They just didn't think it would sell.
Well,
you know?
They're having problems now, right, with making Superman Afro-Latino. You know, and anyway, continue.
Yeah, exactly. So it's kind of weird, right? We're like almost a decade,
70 years later, and it's still a problem.
It's kind of crazy. And anyways, in any case, so his publishers wouldn't let him do it. Chu reacts in this really passive-aggressive way.
Yeah, I love it. So I want to show this picture to everyone.
He is a cartoonist, and that's
what
we do.
So here's a picture. I don't know if we can get that, like zoom in. I don't know. Where's the zoom camera? I don't know how to do this. But
there it is.
Right here, and you say that he never draws. Here's the Green Turtle right here. He never draws the green Turtle face on. Like you can never see his face really.
Yeah.
Which is crazy. So people can still believe maybe that he's Asian American.
Exactly.
I love it.
That's the theory.
Yeah.
That's the theory. Because when you look at the pages, you just don't see superhero comics drawn like that, right? Where you only see the character's back. Or if he's turned towards you, like something's covering his face.
Right.
You know,
and not just the mask, but like a shadow.
Yeah, like a shadow or like his arm, like he'll be punching and his arm will be in the way. and the rumor is that he did it because he wanted to be able to imagine his character as he intended, as an Asian American. Right. We don't know if that's true. Like the Green Turtle only lasts 5 issues.
Right.
He's the lead feature in Blazing Comics.
Okay. Which
you can get for super cheap at comic book conventions. I got all 5 issues.
All 5 issues.
Yeah, and they were all under like $50. It was crazy. For comics that old, it's kind of crazy.
Yeah, that is crazy.
Yeah.
So we have to take a break, but when we come back, I want to talk about the reimagining of this story and kind of like how the parents are portrayed, and also kind of the linking between not being a perfect Asian American, which is definitely a theme here, and I just absolutely love it because I'm not a perfect Asian American. All right, we'll take a break. Welcome back. I'm here with Luen Yang, and we're talking about comics and science and technology. And I am super excited to have you here. We broke and we started talking about this Asian American identity and how that's really explored in these 2 graphic novels that you put together. I want to talk about the first one, American Born Chinese. It's award-winning. I know because of the sticker, the sticker right here. And I consumed this in like an hour the other day.
It took me 5 years to make, but that's cool. You want to read it in an hour, that's cool.
Oh, God. And I love this story. I mean, just to give you some background, my mom's from Taiwan.
Okay.
She came in her like late 20s. And my dad is Mexican-American. And I grew up in a town, like I've mentioned, Linden, which is not culturally diverse, even compared to like this Bellingham.
So were you the most diverse thing in the town?
We were the only Chinese American family, and I'm not even full Chinese.
Okay.
So, and I could totally identify with this book. Like, it was crazy, and how this character, has this, kid who comes and has an accent. He's from Taiwan, and he wants to be friends. Here's this one right here. He comes in, and his initial instinct is just not be friends with this kid from Taiwan. And I could totally identify with that, right? 'Cause I don't even speak Chinese, right? And everyone assumed I did, and I would just be like, I need to distance myself from anything like that. So where did this all come from? Is this personal, or is this just like friends of yours?
That's definitely a personal book. It's fiction, but I pulled heavily from my own life to make that book. Yeah. When I was in 4th grade, this kid came from Taiwan to our school, and he was a 3rd grader. Yeah. And our teachers were so insistent on us being friends.
Yeah.
And I just remember I didn't even have like a logical thought behind it. I just remember being like
repulsed.
Exactly. From the depths of my heart, I really just wanted to get away from this kid. He'd follow me around. He didn't speak English very well, so he's following me around speaking in Mandarin.
Yeah. And do you know Mandarin?
I do, but I wouldn't speak it.
Yeah.
Right? I definitely wouldn't speak it at school.
Yeah.
And then finally, my best friend and I, we ended up like throwing tan bark at him to get him away from us. Do you know what tan bark is? I don't know if they have it up here.
It's the stuff in the playground.
Little bits of wood.
Right, yeah.
Which is really a cruel thing to do, right?
Terrible.
Throwing little bits of wood through. And now when I think about what he must have gone through, right? That was his first week in America. He must have been really happy to see this other Chinese kid at school, and this other Chinese kid ends the week by throwing bits of wood at him.
I don't want to make myself out as a saint. I wasn't I didn't totally turn around. I didn't know any Chinese. I refused to learn.
Do you know any Chinese now?
I took some here at Western Washington University in college. But I didn't want to learn Spanish because I was half Mexican and I was kind of ashamed to tell people that I was too. So there was a lot of self-hate. But there was some turnaround. It took a long time. It took like late 20s.
I just think that's part of growing up, right?
Yeah.
Especially if you grew up in a situation where you were a part of a minority,
right?
Or you were the minority,
You
just go through, and I don't even think you would be able to articulate the self-hate when you're actually feeling it.
Right.
It's just you know that you're not part of the group. You know that you're different, and then you have to at some point become comfortable with that. You have to accept that.
Which is the end of this book.
Yeah, I guess so.
I don't know spoilers, but that's basically the end
I
of
feel
this
like
book.
that, making that book was part of my catharsis. It was part of my process of accepting.
Right. And how old are you when you? If I can ask.
I finished that book when I was in my early 30s.
Right.
It was a long time.
I think I came to that conclusion in my late 20s, early 30s too. I want to go back to maybe science and how so when you're in college and you're were you still a computer scientist when you were writing this?
Yeah, so right after I graduated from college, I took a job as a computer programmer for a couple of years. And then I left that job and I became a high school teacher. I taught computer science. So I taught AP computer science. I taught introductory computer science.
Okay.
And did that for a really long time. So when I was working on that book, I was actually teaching computer science.
So so when you're teaching computer science and you're thinking about I think where we grew up and stuff, I think a theme with computer science and also with your graphic novels is this idea of the model minority, and this idea that, Chinese or Asians, really North Asians are really, really good at science and we're really smart and we're perfect and we're we never get into trouble. And did you see that at all when you were teaching or when you were going through school or when you were writing these books?
As a student, I definitely felt that pressure.
Yeah.
And I think the whole model minority, that whole myth of the model minority really comes out of immigration patterns, right? My parents came over in the 70s, around that time. If you were living in Asia and you were really good at math or science, you were encouraged to come to the United States.
Right.
So of course, if you get all the kids that are good students in that one
It's a
particular area,
selection
you bring it
bias.
over. It totally is a selection bias.
Yeah.
It totally is, right? Yeah. And out of that came this model minority thing.
Right.
I don't think that existed. If you go back to the 40s or 30s,
and the gold rush too.
Yeah, and you look at the Chinese communities that were in San Francisco at the time. I don't think those same stereotypes existed for those communities.
It's so strange because we in Seattle have these histories of the International District and crime and all this stuff that happened, and it's so crazy how quickly that was kind of covered by Microsoft and Google and these selection bias that you have.
Yeah.
And it's so crazy to me.
And there's some, do you know who Ronald Takaki is? He was a professor, an Asian American Studies professor at UC Berkeley.
Okay.
So I was privileged enough to sit in on one of his lectures. Mm-hmm. He's the one that really examines this model minority thing. And he talks about
when
how,
did it start?
When did it start and who's it for? A model for who? You know? And what he argues is that really Asian Americans in a lot of ways are being used by American society almost against other minority groups.
It is. It's a divide and conquer thing.
It kind of is, yeah.
Like I said, I'm being part of two minorities, Hispanic and Asian. You kind of see this dynamic happen, and you see a lot of stuff in STEM. We're trying to get more underrepresented minorities, but Asians aren't included in that. Yeah. But you have to be careful because what about people from Laos? What about people from Cambodia who have also huge struggle and not the same statistics of success as like Chinese Americans.
Or even other parts of China.
Right, exactly right. Or like the Uyghur regions, So, yeah, it's really, really interesting. But what we were talking about in the break is that I really, really love how your character isn't perfect. Like we said, we had this self-hate. We did these terrible things, right? And the same with the shadow hero. His mother is not perfect, but she's still lovable, And I want to live in a world where we can be people of color and not be perfect, right? Yeah. And it's really hard in media.
Or I think it's more just to be three-dimensional.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think when I was growing up, at least, it was very difficult to find three-dimensional characters, three-dimensional Asian American characters in any of the stories that I read or any of the stories that I watched on television.
Right.
G.I. Joe might have been the one exception. There were a couple of G.I. Joe characters, both on the good guy side and the bad guy side, who were three-dimensional. And the reason why was because most of those episodes were written by this Japanese-American writer. So he was very cognizant of this guy named Luen Yang.
Cool.
Yeah, you should check him out. He's awesome.
I should know more. But we were talking about complex characters in the DC universe, so we can get to your Superman writing. I think Superman is more complex than people give him credit for. And Harley, we were talking about like Batman villains. There's a lot of villains in the Batman universe that are they're straddling, right? I mean, Catwoman is very much not good, but not all bad. And it's great to actually have these complex characters. So tell me more about Superman and how you write him. And how is he different from like the movies and like the old trope?
I think the superhero genre has a lot of overlap with the immigrant experience. The creators of Superman and Batman too.
Yeah.
And pretty much every other superhero out there.
He's an international immigrant.
Yeah. They were children of immigrants. They were these children of these poor Jewish immigrants from Europe.
Right.
And I think they really embedded a lot of their experience into this character.
They did.
This whole idea of having to negotiate two different identities and two different names, two different sets of expectations, that's just something that the kids of immigrants have to deal with on a daily basis.
Right.
So when I grew up, I had one name at home and another one at school, spoke one language at home and another one at school, had two different sets of expectations. And unconsciously or not, I think that's part of the reason why I was drawn to superheroes as a kid, is that I saw that same dual identity play out in these comics.
Right. Well, and they were saying that these dual identities are okay and even necessary.
Yeah.
Like I was like, oh,
that they're
it's
good
okay.
For the world. Right?
Yeah. No, I loved that. No, but so how are you writing Superman then? How is the way you write him like similar to the old ones, or maybe more like the uncle? Like, how are you writing it?
Well, first, I'm working as part of a team. So Superman is popular enough now that he's in 4 different books. So there's Superman, which I write. There's Action Comics.
This is Superman right here.
Yeah, that's the one I write.
First
and then
one.
There's Action Comics. There's Superman, Wonder Woman, and Batman, Superman.
Okay.
So we all have to kind of coordinate. I'll tell you what draws me to the character though is those immigrant roots.
Yeah.
And this idea of the dual identity. What we wanted to do, so something that kids of immigrants have to do as they get older is they have to take these 2 different identities that they lived in for all their childhoods, and they have to kind of collapse them into one.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And that's what we force Superman to do as well. In the first storyline, this new villain who's kind of like an evil version of Facebook, and we can debate.
Yes, yeah.
We can debate whether you need an evil version of Facebook.
I was wondering who was on his phone. Somebody's talking to Superman. I'm like, I don't know who this person is.
That's right. So he's like an evil version of Facebook. He leads to Superman's secret identity being exposed. So he's forced to integrate. Wow. He's forced to integrate these 2 identities.
So this Superman that you're writing, everyone knows he's Clark Kent?
Everyone knows he's Clark Kent. Wow. By issue number 44, everyone knows.
Wow, and you're 41, so this is like three issues in.
3 issues in, and he gets revealed.
I gotta actually read the rest. I got this one for free.
And then after he gets revealed, this took a little arguing on my part, but we bring him to Oakland, California.
Oh yes.
That's what you do, right?
Right.
When things go bad, you go to Oakland.
I hear Oakland's getting really nice though.
Oakland is getting really nice.
It's gentrifying.
Yeah,
That's what I hear.
Yeah.
We're gonna take a break, and when we come back, I want to talk about your new appointment, how we're going to integrate all this stuff, this cool stuff we've been talking about, and actually get people interested in STEM.
Awesome. Welcome
back. We're talking with graphic novelist Luen Yang. and we're talking about comics a lot, and I swear we're going to talk about science again. I want to bring it to scientists in comics. So we had this big event here at Western where we talked about science and pop culture and who's being portrayed as the scientists in pop culture. And I dressed up as Dr. Light, and we had this big event.
Which is awesome.
Yeah, thank you.
Which is perfect.
Right, because I used to dress up like Harley, but it just became too popular, so I Googled. I Googled like Asian astrophysics, and then she came up.
Yep. I think she would be the only one to come up, right?
Yeah, she was the
Did anyone else come up?
No.
Okay.
No. In comics, no.
Okay.
And I was like, that's just me. I can just slightly be me and be a comic book, be a superhero. But I wanted to say, like, there are a lot of science in comics. I mean, like, that's how people get superpowers.
Yeah. I mean, they're sometimes called science heroes. Superheroes are called science heroes, right?
Really?
Because there is this science fiction element to a lot of origin stories. I mean, not Batman, but pretty much everybody else.
I mean, I would say that he's kind of,
I guess
technology.
So. He's an engineer.
He's an engineer.
Yeah, he's an engineer. Yeah,
right?
You're right.
So Batman's an engineer.
Or at least he hires engineers. He's like a Steve Jobs. He hires hires Lucius Fox.
Right, but it depends on who.
And yells at him to make awesome technology.
If you look at the animated series, he's doing a lot of that engineering himself.
Yeah, that's true.
Right?
That's true.
But he does hire Lucius Fox, another person of color in science.
That's right.
But Superman is a journalist. Batman's the greatest detective. These are people that ask questions, which is basically what scientists do. So you have this science. Is that what you want to kind of project and kind of promote with your new position? So let's talk about your your goals. I have them written down here, so I'll check if you're right.
As national ambassador, every national ambassador comes up with a platform, which is just something that they want to talk about during their term.
Yeah.
For me, it's reading without walls. And that's just a fancy way of saying I want to get kids to explore the world through reading. I think exploration is such an important part of growing up, and books are such a great way of exploring the world. So I'm encouraging kids to do 3 things to explore the world. Number one is
I have them here.
To read books about people who are different from them, so people who look different from them or live differently from them. Second is to read books about topics that they might find intimidating. And my pet project here is STEM books about science, technology, engineering, and math.
Right.
And then finally, it's to read books in different formats. When I was a kid, I had this friend who was a huge science fiction geek, and he totally looked down his nose at comics, right? He just would never touch a graphic novel in his life.
Yeah.
So to a kid like that, I would want him to try a graphic novel.
Right.
But now I meet kids that are the exact opposite,
right,
that only read graphic novels. And to those kids, I really want them to explore some prose or some, books in verse or something.
Right. Well, I think, there's even ways that you can even trick them. This sounds weird, but you can even trick them. I think, like, for instance, I am a giant Avatar: The Last Airbender fan. I mean, like, when it came out, I was in grad school, and I love this comic, and it's very mystical, and there's a lot of magic in it.
Yeah.
But there's, like, hidden inside the story, and you're actually the writer for the comic, right? Which I think you're, like, the coolest now. Hidden in there is Sokka, this character right here. I don't know if you can see that. He doesn't have any powers. He doesn't have any bending. He doesn't have any magic. And he's an engineer.
He is. He totally is. He draws designs of machines and he gets them made.
Right.
Yeah, he's awesome.
And he talks about science a lot in the series.
He talks about science a lot. Yeah.
And I feel like there are ways you can just kind of, I don't know. I don't want to say trick, but insert these things.
I think there's something about, like, the stories we tell color certain professions, right? And I think that one of the things that we're seeing now is that scientists and nerds and people and geeks are kind of emerging as a cool class.
We are cool.
And the reason why that's happening, in part, is because they're showing up as heroes in the stories that we read.
Right. Yeah. Like, you can be a nerd and you don't have to look like, the NASA engineers from 1950.
Yeah, like or 20-year-old Bill Gates. You don't have to look like that, right?
Exactly. You can look like me. You can look like Barry Allen. You can look like Cisco. But you also do this comic called Secret Coders. Can you tell us about that?
Secret Coders is a series of graphic novel series. There will be 6 books in all, and I'm super excited about this book.
Yeah, I went to your website. So it's secret-coders.com.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a book that I've thought about for a really long time. It's a book that teaches kids the fundamentals of computer science through Logo, through that language that we talked about earlier.
Awesome. You just dug it up from the grave and
yeah,
resurrected it.
Well, there's a reason why I wanted to do Logo.
Okay.
And it's because I wanted to draw the parallel between coding and magic. So in magic, like in Harry Potter, usually, you speak these words that sound like they're out of some dead language, and then something magic happens, something amazing happens.
It's called Latin.
And I think code. Yeah, it's called Latin. And I think coding is the same way.
Yeah,
you speak these words that seem kind of weird, and then something amazing happens.
Right.
So I wanted that parallel. I thought one way to draw that parallel was to use a language that's kind of dead, that's on the dead side.
Right, and
like
kind
Logo.
of mystical.
And a little bit mystical, yeah.
I love it. And these kids in this new series go to a school and they're solving mysteries.
Yeah,
so it is kind of mystical and magic.
Yeah, well, I only handle the writing. The drawing is handled by this guy named Mike Holmes, who's amazingly talented. He used to work on the Adventure Time comic before he started working with me.
Which is very popular here on campus.
And what we're doing in the book is I want to structure every chapter to kind of be like one of my lessons. I started thinking about this book when I was teaching computer science, and I used to teach in this really visual way. I ended up drawing a lot on the board. And I always thought, man, a lot of these lessons would really work well as comics. So each of these chapters, it starts off with a little bit of review of an old concept. Then I introduce something new. And then I give them an exercise to solve on their own. So that's how I ran my lectures, right? I would do a little bit of review. I'd introduce a new concept.
Right.
I'd end the lecture with something that they would work on their own to see if they understood the concept.
So do you still teach a little bit, or are you kind of teaching through this comic right now?
Well, right now, for STEM at least, I'm only teaching through the comic. I am still teaching creative writing. I teach through the MFA program at Hamlin University. It's an online program, so I do it from home.
Okay, so do you ever throw in a little bit of computer science just to challenge them?
I think that there's a lot of overlap between computer science and telling stories.
Well, in creative writing, you have to be creative to write a really nice program. My programs in computer science were awful, so they were long.
I bet they were kind of awesome.
No,
I bet they're kind of awesome.
They weren't.
But I mean, it's the same kind. Like when you're working on a comic, what you have to do is you have to take a story that's generally kind of vague in your head, right? It starts off as kind of vague in your head. It's kind of big and sprawling, and you have to break it up into these discrete components. Like first into chapters, and then into panels.
Right.
And in computer science, it's the same skill,
thing.
right? You take an idea that's kind of vague, and you break it into modules. Exactly. And then those modules into lines of code.
Wow. No, I love this. I love this. So. I really hope this takes off. I'm actually going to read this with my daughter because I would love for her to understand this.
That'd
and I would actually love to learn how to code. So what's then next for this ambassadorship? It just started. So what's your plan like after the ambassadorship? What do you want to do? Do you want to still do STEM stuff, or are you going to kind of go off into?
Well, I have, so we just finished writing and drawing the 3rd volume of Secret Coders. We have 3 more of those to do.
Okay.
I'm also working on the next book that I'm both writing and drawing. Okay. And that'll be my first nonfiction book. It's about basketball.
Awesome.
I followed a high school basketball team for a season. And
really?
I'm doing a book about them.
That's awesome. We have to wrap up. This has been like an awesome conversation. Hopefully we can maybe continue it offline and nobody gets to see it. But I do want to thank you for coming, and I think you're doing wonderful work.
Thank you. Thank you, Regina. This was fun. It was
great.
I
think so too. This is our first time. Watchers and listeners, you can tell us how this turned out, and if it was a disaster, let me know, because I need those negative thoughts. No, I'm just joking. I think it went great. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And I'm going to shake your hand like an adult.
Awesome.
Okay.